Hello, Quarkus contributors. This is Jason Green with the Quarkus project, and I just wanted to take a few minutes of your time to show you some things about our new CI infrastructure, which is based on the relatively new GitHub Actions. Now, one of the cool features of GitHub Actions is that you can actually run the CI workflow in your own fork independently of all the other testing that's going on for other pull requests. So this is great because it means that you don't block on other tests from completing. You can just test your change right away. And it also means that we get to distribute the workload so that it's not just using the CI facilities for the Quarkus project. We only have a limited amount of parallel testing we could do. So by having everybody have the opportunity to test themselves, then you could see your feedback and then contribute that change, make sure everything's passing, and then contribute the pull request, which I'll show you how that works. So what I've just done is I've created a simple user account. I've forked the repository, something you've likely already done. One of the things you want to make sure is if you already have a fork and you haven't updated recently, you'll want to do that because what's really important for the branch is that you have this directory, this GitHub directory, and when you go into it, there's a workflows, and within workflows, there is the actual definitions for the GitHub Actions that drives our CI. So the very first thing you need to do after you have your fork and it's been updated is you go to the Actions tab, and what you'll see is there's this green button that says by default, workflows are not enabled for forks. So since we want to be able to do our own testing, we want to be able to enable this. So all you have to do is you just hit this green button. And now we have the workflows are actually enabled. But first we need to actually make a change. So let's just do something innocuous. So we could do something like, let's just take and create another method here, and we'll we'll switch this path to this to the original hello, and then we'll create a new hello2 method. How about that? This is just kind of a bogus test here. So it's a very innocuous change that will let us test our facility. So I could save that, and all I have to do at this point, now that my workflow is enabled, is I just have to commit it. So if I do a git diff, we can see we have our changes here. So we'll say we're going to commit, add new. Well, actually, should make sure the actual URL is correct. Add new greeting method. Right. So we commit our change in. Now, like I said, you want to make sure it's based off of the current upstream so that you get that workflow in there. So one of the ways you can quickly do that is after you've done your commit, you could just do a quick rebase off of our official master. So I'll just pull that real quick, and you can see it applies the commit we just did right on top. And then all we have to do is just push our change up just like you normally would. Now, normally you'd create a new branch, but I'm just going to be lazy in this case just to show you, and I'm just going to push the master branch up. So once the master happens, what'll happen is it'll see the commit, and it'll generate what's called a push event, and then the push event should trigger the actions workflow. So we can see right here it's been triggered, and you can see it's triggered based off of a push, and then there's our commit. So if I click this little commit, I can see, add new greeting method. I can actually see this change here, and then our actions will run. So one thing I'd recommend is when you're actually looking at the workflow that's running for your change, is that you use Chrome, just because some of the other browsers, it seems like they have trouble with the way the JavaScript processes data, so it can kind of get sort of slow. So it'll start off where there's just this one job that runs. So we can see it's actually working. There's actual activity that's happening. The way our CI is architected is we have a Java 8 build, which starts first, and it's responsible for generating the Maven repository that everything else is going to use. And then all the other jobs will get kicked off. So you'll see jobs for for each of the JVMs that are tested, and then for all the different native modules that are running. The whole process takes around an hour to complete. So now's a good time to go and do some other tasks. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause right here, and then I'm going to come back after this is completed, and I'll tell you some more useful information about how we go to the next step and how we take our change and then push it up in a pull request. Hey everybody, we're back. So we look at our job has finally passed successfully. It took about an hour and a half to run. And one of the things you'll notice is we do have some other jobs that run. They don't actually do anything. You can see they're in the skip status. So one thing that's really easy, or I recommend you do to just to nicely filter it, is just you can just click over on the left side for Quarkus CI, and that's the one that you're interested in for the jobs that are run. So if we look at the job, you can see that that all of the individual tasks passed. You can ignore some of these annotations. It's just picking up on elements that were in the log file. Had there been a failure, we would see an X mark, and then there would be a test you could download. So I can actually show you a quick example of that. If you jump over to say the main Quarkus repo, and we can actually look at all the actions that are running for pull requests. And so here's one that failed, and you can see the JVM 11 test failed, and then there's the artifact right there that would contain the test reports for the failure that you could download, just a zip file so that you could look at it. But you could also look at the console. So in this case, we'll look at this one and we'll see what went wrong. This particular test has failed, this code flow test. So sometimes you could just look in the log file and you can get an idea for what failed, and then run that test locally in your local environment, or you can edit, if you want, you could edit the workflow and just disable everything other than the specific test that you're looking to find the failure for. But in this case, let's go back to our original workflow. And okay, so this one passed successfully, so we're good to go. So the next step is we verified, we made our change, we verified it works correctly. So now we can make a pull request. So that's really easy to do. All, as you know, it's normal, same exact process that you followed before. And what it will do is it will actually run testing again. So let's say though that maybe instead of just creating a pull request the normal way, what we could do is we could say, well, what if instead of running this testing first, you wanted to get reviews from some of the other contributors? Well, an easy way to do that is to just publish it as a draft pull request, right? So we'll just take a look at that. So if I was to come in here and choose create draft pull requests, then our CI system will skip running. Now, another way you could do it is if you don't want to create it as a draft pull request, you could just do a regular pull request, and then all you have to do is stick in WIP, either in brackets like this, case doesn't matter, or you can just do it with a space, and then our system is smart enough to ignore it. So I'm just going to leave a note here. Just so everybody knows not to not to do anything with it. So go ahead and create the pull request. And the work in progress, whenever you do actually do a WIP, you'll get this work in progress test, but you'll notice that no other checks will actually run. It won't actually verify the pull request until we actually were to change that subject and get rid of, if we get rid of WIP, then it would run that test. However, what we can do is we can look at the individual change that was made in our particular branch. So if we jump right back over, you could see the check mark there for the commit, and then all the individual tests that were run, which is exactly the same information that you saw on this on the screen over here back in the actions on your individual fork. Okay, so back to our pull request. At this point, we decide, okay, we've done our work, and now we're going to actually go to execute it. So no problem. We'll just, like as I mentioned, we'll just remove WIP from the subject, and then we'll save it. And then what'll happen is it'll pick up, and the WIP thing will pass, and then you'll see our actual CI run starts to run. And this looks pretty much the same as it looked as you remember before when you're running in your fork. So if we click on details directly from that screen from the pull request, you can see it running right here. And it's going to go once again. It'll run the Java 8 build to stage everything, and then finally the test for all the different JVM configurations, and then the native executions that run. Okay, so let's recap everything we just saw. Step 1, fork the repository if you haven't already. Step 2, click on the Actions tab and click the green button to enable workflows. The same step as if you already have a repository. When you click the actions, you'll notice you'll see a thing here to enable it for the very first time. If you already have the actions enabled, but you see a big menu for workflows, then that means you haven't yet imported the workflows, you haven't yet rebased onto latest master. Once your actions are enabled and you have the workflows in your repository, you can branch, make your change, then rebase. This is always just good practice anyways to make sure that when you're testing your change that it's actually using the most current master and it's not behind. But also it's important for the reason I just described, that it actually pulls in the workflow files, allowing your job to actually run CI in your local GitHub user account. And finally, you push your change. On every push, GitHub will kick off the Quarkus CI workflow, which you'll be able to see by clicking the Actions tab once again. You'll see the list of all the jobs that are run. And from that list, you can choose to look at the job, inspect it, cancel it, whatever. After you've started that running, you can either just wait for that to finish and then create a PR, or if you would like to discuss your change with other contributors, you could open a work in progress or a draft PR, which will not run testing on the Quarkus pull request processing. Once you promote that, then testing will run. From there, you can get feedback, possibly modify your change, and wait for your final results for your local fork testing. Once your local fork has passed, and you'll see that in the Actions tab, you'll see the green check mark. You'll be able to click the job and see the results for all the different subjobs that ran. You can then convert your pull request from a work in progress to a regular PR. Or if you didn't do this step the first time, you can just create your PR for the very first time and then let the normal PR processing, which you'll have great confidence that it will pass because you know that you ran it locally already in your GitHub user account. And finally, after you've done all of that, it's time to celebrate your victory. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this video, and I hope that the PR process goes smoothly for you. If you run into any issues at all, feel free to email the Quarkus mailing list, and either I or somebody else will be happy to help you work through the process. And once again, we really appreciate your time and your patience on this. Thanks.